Hello, my name is Trisha and I'm a museum educator here at the National Museum of Ireland Archaeology, and welcome to our special online tour for the Winter Solstice. This tour will look at the Winter Solstice, the shortest day of the year. I will be talking to you about how the Winter Solstice was marked by people in Neolithic Ireland, especially at the Passage Tomb at Newgrange in County Meath. I will also be showing you some artefacts found at Newgrange, and artefacts from the Bronze Age that are widely thought to be linked to celestial bodies. Along the way, I will also show you some replica objects from our handling collection, which I have on the table here. But first, what exactly is the Winter Solstice? The Winter Solstice, also known as midwinter, is the day in the year where we have the least amount of sunlight. And it usually occurs around the 21st of December, but it can happen anywhere between the 20th and the 22nd of December. Solstice essentially means sun stop, coming from Latin. If you were to observe the position of the rising and setting sun on the horizon each day, you would notice as we get closer to the winter solstice, the sun rises closer to the southeast and sets closer to the southwest. You'll also notice throughout the day, the sun is much lower in the sky, especially in comparison to how high the sun is in the sky during the summer months. After the solstice occurs, the sunrise starts to move east and the sunset starts to move west. But on the days around the solstice, the sunset and rises appear to turn or to stop on the horizon, hence sun stop. From that point, the days start to get longer and those grand old stretches in the evening start to come in. This happens because the Earth's axis is tilted. At the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere, the North Pole has maximum tilt away from the sun. The opposite is occurring in the southern hemisphere. They are now experiencing their summer solstice. The tilt of the Earth is also what gives us our seasons. The sun is the most prominent celestial body in our sky. Today we know how the sun gives light, energy and warmth. And this understanding of the sun's importance to life is seen across all societies throughout time and all around the world. It was only natural for people to mark the importance and movement of the sun in their monuments and their objects. Ireland was no different. In Ireland, we have many structures that are aligned to celestial events, particularly the winter and summer solstices and the equinoxes. Many of these monuments date to the Neolithic and some into the Bronze Age. We also have some artefacts on display from the Bronze Age that help to indicate how people may have venerated the sun and other celestial bodies in the past. We are now going to take a look at these artefacts in more detail in the exhibitions here at the museum. I'm here in the Prehistoric Ireland exhibition, which has objects on display from Stone Age and Bronze Age Ireland. The Neolithic is the third phase of the Stone Age and it began in Ireland around 4000 BC. At this time, people began to farm. They cleared woodland so they could grow crops and rear animals, and they also built more permanent homesteads, adapting a more sedentary lifestyle. Prior to the Neolithic was the Mesolithic or Middle Stone Age, in which people mainly led a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. During the Mesolithic, people mainly used flint to make stone tools such as arrowheads and scrapers to hunt and prepare animals. And they gathered up nuts, fruits and berries, especially hazelnuts like the ones that we have here. The introduction of farming, which marks the beginning of the Neolithic, brought about a huge change in society in how people sourced their food and how they lived. This in turn brought a significant change in people's beliefs and religion, and we mainly see this in how they treated their dead. We actually have very little evidence for burial and treatment of the dead from the Mesolithic. However, in the Neolithic, not only were people burying their dead, but they also began to build large megalithic or stone tombs in order to bury them. There are four main types of tombs that we find in Ireland from the Neolithic: court tombs, portal tombs, wedge tombs and passage tombs. Today we're going to focus on passage tombs, and we have a reconstruction of a passage tomb here in the museum. There are over 300 passage tombs in Ireland today, and the most well known is Newgrange in County Meath. Passage tombs gain their name because of their shape and structure. Typically, they have an entrance followed by a corridor or a passage, hence passage tomb. This often leads to a central chamber. In some cases, there can be up to 3 smaller chambers or recesses off the central chamber. The entire structure is covered over with a mound made up of earth and stones. They are often surrounded by curbstones on the outside. Often we find the stones on the inside and outside decorated with stone carvings called megalithic art. It is in the chamber that archaeologists usually find human remains. Most of the time, the remains are cremated, so they would have been burnt before being placed in the tomb. Sometimes grave goods are found, such as stone beads and pendants, bone pins and pieces of flint. These megalithic tombs are also often built on prominent locations and on high ground, often dominating the landscape and ensuring that they can be seen from far away. The construction and use of passage tombs help to tell us about society, social structure and religious beliefs in Neolithic Ireland. Firstly, these are large tombs requiring, in some cases, literally tons of stones of varying sizes used in their construction. The construction of these tombs would have required a huge amount of communal effort and social organisation. Secondly, the very fact that these people went to so much effort to create such monuments meant that they must have been important to them. Further to this, many of them are accurately aligned to celestial events such as the Winter Solstice at Newgrange. This in turn tells us that these events would have been important to people in the Neolithic. Although we will never know for sure what way people would have marked these events, it must have been significant enough for them to build these tombs in such a particular way to light them up on these days. The illumination of the passage tomb at the Winter Solstice marks Newgrange in County Meath as one of the most well-known astronomically aligned structures in the world. The passage tomb at Newgrange is just one monument as part of the Boyne Valley, also known as Brúna Boinne. There are around 40 known tombs in this area, along with many other associated monuments, including henges, enclosures and stone circles. All of these are located in this one loop of the River Boyne. The 3 main tombs in the area are Newgrange, Knowth and Dowth, and these were built between 3300 and 2500 BC. Because of the amount of tombs and monuments found in the area, Brúna Boinne is regarded as a significant Neolithic ritual landscape and an international scale, so much so that the area is a designated World Heritage Site. It is the alignment at the entrance of Newgrange to the southeast that allows the passage tomb to light up. On the morning of the Winter Solstice, when the sun rises as far southeast as possible, it illuminates the passage and chamber at Newgrange. It was known locally that this occurred, and it was confirmed by Professor M.J. O'Kelly in 1967. This works because at the entrance to Newgrange there is an additional lintel or box, which is known as the light box, above the entrance. It is through this box that the sun shines through, allowing the passage tomb to light up. The light box is extremely significant to ensure that the chamber lights up. If you've ever visited Newgrange, you would notice that as you walk through the passage tomb, the ground rises. To counteract the ground rising, the light box had to be inserted to ensure that the sunlight reached the back of the chamber. This does happen in a few days either side of the solstice, but it's the most accurate and long-lasting on the day of the actual solstice. Again, the very fact that they went to so much effort to build the tomb and ensure, more importantly, to build it in such a way to capture this moment tells us that the winter solstice was very important to the people in Neolithic Ireland. However, we can only really speculate on the meaning and the religious beliefs, but there are a lot of widely accepted ideas of why they were built and what they meant to the people that built them. One of the main functions were as burial places. In the case of Newgrange, the remains of at least 5 people were found. It is also thought that those that were buried in these tombs were the elite or high status members of society. Passage tombs could therefore have been seen as homes or residence of the ancestors. Aside from Newgrange functioning as a burial place, there is a lot of symbolism around how and why the chamber lights up, particularly on the winter solstice. One theory is that it could have represented the death of the old sun and the birth of the new sun that would come after the shortest day, when the days start to strengthen again. With this comes ideas about rebirth, renewal and rejuvenation. The lighting up of the chamber could also have marked the moment when the spirits of the dead moved to the afterlife. It could also have been a means of communicating or linking with the other world, be that of the dead, spirits or the gods. It is generally accepted that people would have had some form of celebration and ritual activities at Newgrange to mark the winter solstice. It is also generally accepted that people would have had some form of celebration and ritual activities at Newgrange to mark the winter solstice. If ritual activities took place inside the tomb during the illumination, only a small number would have been present, owing to the size of the chamber, and likely only the elite members of society were involved. However, it is also very likely that a lot of activity took place outside the tomb. The curbstones all around the outside are decorated with megalithic art, leading some to suggest that some sort of procession or rounds may have happened around the tomb. Further to this, there are the remains of stone circles around the tomb. However, not all the stones are present today. The stone circles may have played a role in activities on these days. Further to this, the passage tomb of Doubt, located 2 kilometres northeast of Newgrange, is aligned to the setting sun of the winter solstice, and it has been suggested that people may have started celebrations at Newgrange in the morning and made their way to Doubt for the sunset. This again shows the evidence of how the entire landscape at the Boyne Valley is a ritual landscape and shows how monuments can be interlinked. From a more practical point of view, because people began farming in the Neolithic, the illumination of Newgrange helped to mark the change of seasons. They needed to understand and follow the passage of time was greater for a farming community than the Mesolithic hunter-gatherer society that preceded it. A lot of what we know about Newgrange comes from the excavations that were led by Professor M.J. O'Kelly between 1962 and 1975. All of the artefacts that were uncovered as part of these excavations are in the museum's collection. Some of these are on display and the rest are part of the reserved collection. Some of the artefacts uncovered include these miniature hammer and pestle pendants, stone marbles and beads. The function of these objects is unknown, but it is likely that they may have served some form of ceremonial or ritual role at Newgrange. A selection of flint scrapers were also found as part of these excavations. We know a lot about Newgrange and the Boyne Valley today. However, new evidence and research is always shedding light on the past. For example, during the summer of 2018, due to the heat wave and subsequent drought, previously unknown monuments began to appear in the area in the form of crop marks. Close to Doubt, another passage tomb was also excavated around this time. One of the most exciting areas of archaeology is that we're always learning and discovering new things about the past. Passage tombs are just one example of how people venerated and marked celestial bodies in the past. We are now going to take a look at some gold objects from the Bronze Age that are linked to the sun and the moon. It is not just in our monuments that we see links to celestial bodies, but also in our objects. One of the most striking are these pair of gold Sundisks dating to the Bronze Age and are on display in our Ireland's Gold exhibition. The Bronze Age began in Ireland around 2500 BC. At this time, similar to the Neolithic, we see a huge change in how people are living. People continue to farm, however, their objects and beliefs change significantly. We see a move away from objects made out of stone to objects now being made from metal, with metalworking techniques being introduced. Bronze is the most prominent metal being used at this time. Bronze is an alloy or mixture of copper and tin. We have evidence for Bronze Age copper mines in Ireland from Ross Island in County Kerry and Mount Gabriel in County Cork. Tin does not naturally occur in Ireland, and this was likely imported from Cornwall in England. The general rule is about 90% copper, 10% tin, but in reality, archaeologists find everything and anything in between this. So often objects from the Bronze Age are referred to as copper alloy. These objects were mainly used for objects of relatively common usage, such as axes, spearheads, knives, and in the later Bronze Age, swords, cauldrons, and even horns. However, in Ireland, another metal that was being used quite a lot was gold. So much so that Ireland actually has one of the largest national gold collections in the world, and this is primarily as a result of the amount of gold objects that have been found dated to the Bronze Age. What is significant about these objects is that these are mostly likely worn by high status members of society. However, none of them have been found within a burial context, so it is not fully known how some of these objects would have been used. Further to this, these objects have often been found associated with water, near rivers or lakes, and in particularly found near bogs. Often they have been purposely broken or damaged before being deposited. This all suggests that these objects were likely ritually deposited as offerings to the gods. The Sundisks are just one example of the type of gold objects that have been found. These date to the early Bronze Age and date between 2200 and 1800 BC, and this pair was found in the roots of an old oak tree at Tadavenant in County Monaghan. We call them Sundisks as we believe that they are stylized representations of the sun. There is a number of reasons for this. Firstly, by using gold, the colour may represent the colour of the sun. Secondly, they are circular in shape. The main indication is actually how they are decorated. Many of them are decorated with cruciform or cross-like motifs at the centre. There is also radiating zigzag triangles and concentric circles, and it is thought that these motifs together represent the rays of light as they come from the sun, hence why we call them Sundisks. Sundisks have mainly found in pairs and are almost identical. However, sometimes one of the discs is slightly larger than the other. They tend to be domed at the very centre with perforations. This suggests that they may have been sewn onto clothing to be worn, possibly over buttons and on the shoulders. They are also very thin and were constructed by hammering gold into thin sheets. The decoration was etched on or using a technique called repousse, which is when the decoration is pushed out from the reverse of the object so it appears as high relief on the front. Closely linked to the Sundisks are these objects here called lunulae, or lunula is the singular. These also date to the early Bronze Age and are very characteristic of the early Irish Bronze Age. Over 100 have been found in Europe, with around 80 of these found in Ireland, and it's thought that those found outside of Ireland are exports or copies of Irish objects. If we look at our replica here, we can see their crescent shape in more detail, and it's thought that these are stylized representations of the moon, hence why we call them lunula, meaning little moon. Again, these are made from hammered gold and the decoration has been incised onto them. Some of them are extremely lightweight, often weighing between 70 to 100 grams. Again, these have never been found in a burial context, so it's not fully known how these were worn, but more than likely they were worn around the neck. Although their shape strongly links them to the moon, it is also thought that these are representations of the solar boat, which is depicted in lots of different cultures at different times. The solar boat is seen as a vessel that carries the sun across the sky and through the underworld during the nighttime to bring the sunrise the following morning. This may also explain why the Sundisks are almost identical. One disc may represent the sun during the day and the other disc representing the sun at night as it travels through the underworld. However, even though the Sundisks and lunula date to around the same time, there has only been one incident where a lunula and pair of Sundisks were found together. This was the Colgabeg hoard, which was rediscovered in County Roscommon in 2008. The founding of the lunula and the Sundisks together suggests that they could have been worn or used at the same time. These are just some examples of objects in the museum's collection that are linked to celestial events, and this topic has been extensively researched and studied by former Keeper of Antiquities at the museum, Mary Cahill. We are now going to take a look at some more objects that were found at Newgrange. Even though Newgrange is more typically associated with the Neolithic, these objects indicate that the site was still very important to people at a later time and into the Iron Age. Here in the Treasury exhibition, we have some of the Roman objects that were found near 3 standing stones at the entrance to the passage tomb at Newgrange. These were found as part of the excavations that were led by Professor M.J. O'Kelly. The objects found include 2 spiral rings, an oval and circular brooch, 2 gold coins, and 2 pieces of inscribed metal. Both of the rings are made from silver and has 3 coils, with the central one being decorated. The brooches are made from copper alloy and are gilded. At the centre of the oval one, there is a piece of dark glass, and it is thought that these were made in southeast England. Both of these coins have added loops, so they may have been worn as pendants. These are just 2 examples of a selection of Roman coins found at Newgrange, and these ones were struck during the 4th century. There is also a piece of bronze and gold with inscriptions that are likely some of the earliest examples of writing in Ireland. The inscription on the bronze piece is Om and appears to be commemorative in nature, suggesting that the person it was being offered to was Irish. Each of these objects date to the Iron Age from between the 2nd and the 4th century AD. All of these objects are Romano-British. Although Ireland was never conquered by the Roman Empire, there were contacts with Roman Britain, and these objects are just one indication of that. It is thought that the placing of these objects at Newgrange suggests that it was an important veneration site, and it may have been regarded as a shrine, similar to Roman British practices from the time, and these were likely placed here by visitors from Roman Britain. Or they could have been placed here by Irish people who had contact with the Roman world. Thank you for joining me on our Winter Solstice tour here at the National Museum of Ireland Archaeology. We were able to just touch on some of the topics, but it was great to have the opportunity to talk to you about Newgrange, some of the objects that were found as part of the excavations, and other objects on display here at the museum that are linked to celestial bodies. Please do come into the museum when it's safe to do so and see these objects on display for yourself. In the meantime, please do follow us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter for upcoming events here at the museum. I hope you all have a wonderful winter solstice this year, and especially after the year that we have, hopefully it's a sign for better and brighter days ahead of us.